Brad, you're about to scoop me here, Brad, because my next question was going to be, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Is H.R. 811 a solution? There's been a lot of debate going back and forth between voting activists like yourself.
Yeah.
Is H.R. 11 going to be the solution? And that's really the bottom line question. And I forget the number in the Senate, but there's the equivalent bill in the Senate that's being looked at.
Well, yeah, H.R. 811 is the Rush Holtz bill in the House, and I should say I helped draft that bill before it was introduced. However, there are a lot of problems with it, including one huge one, as far as I can see, is that it's going to allow for the continued use of these DRE touchscreen voting systems. In fact, the institutionalization of these touchscreen systems. And this is beyond the pale, beyond all imagination, why these guys, knowing, and Rush Holtz, by the way, is a rocket scientist, quite literally, he should know better, why they're continuing to allow these touchscreen systems in this bill is an outrage. And you've got a lot of Democratic public advocacy groups, most notably People for the American Way, who are out there pushing for this. And People for the American Way actually prefers touchscreen voting over paper-based systems beyond all reason. This bill is going to move forward. This bill may well pass unless people call their congressman, unless they raise hell and say it is time, once and for all, to ban these DRE touchscreen voting machines, period. With or without a so-called paper trail, it makes no difference. We need a paper ballot, not a trail, a ballot that is actually counted for every vote cast in America. And indeed, the Senate bill put forward by Dianne Feinstein, the 1487, unfortunately, I'm sad to report, is even worse than Rush Holt's H.R. 811. So the citizens of this country got their work cut out for them right now, but we are the only hope, and we need to start taking action and raising some hell until someone, whether it's in D.C. or at the state and local level, gets this right.
Brad, I'm going to take that as you're not going to endorse H.R. 811 or the Dianne Feinstein's bill. Let me look at one.
No.
Let me look at one of the points that we heard recently, and that the priority software and the priority firmware, the part of Holt's bill which say that must now become open source code, was pulled out in committee. That was the last hope for actually examining how the votes were counted or tabulated in an election. Is there anything else you could add on that?
Well, yeah, indeed, as it was originally drafted before it went to committee, the bill was pretty good on source code disclosure. And I had a hand certainly in that section in saying, look, this source code needs to be open not just to experts, but to anyone in the public who wishes to examine it. That was in the original legislation. By the time it got out of committee, apparently the voting machine vendors and the lobbyists were able to get their claws into this thing and change it so that the source code will be put into escrow. Excuse me. Will be put into escrow and only made available in the event of that a problem is discovered in an election. So, after the election, folks may be able to get to it. And at that time, it will only be so-called experts and scientists who are allowed to look at the source code. And when they do it, they'll do it under non-disclosure agreements. So we, again, the public, is knocked out of the system. We don't get to see how our very own elections are running. So much for government of the people and by the people and for the people. But that's what this bill will do. It is damned dangerous, and I can't say that enough. Until we get this thing changed, our democracy is only going to get worse, not better.
One last question, and that is, what is the cost of voting per vote on an electronic DRE voting machine, with or without a paper trail? And what is the cost of voting on paper? And can this entire effort be viewed as a way to put more money, more taxpayer money, into the hands of companies and corporations which perhaps support the administration and perhaps are supporting the future administration?
Well, that's right. There's no doubt that these DRE touchscreen systems put a lot of money, billions of dollars, into the hands of those interests you're talking about, those voting machine companies, and they have absolutely no accountability for it. As for the price, They used to argue that, these touchscreen systems are going to save millions of dollars in paper costs or some nonsense like that. Well, what we found now, several years down the line, is pretty much everywhere you look, these elections are 2 to 3 times more expensive than they were when they were run on paper ballot systems. The city of Salt Lake, Utah, has just announced that their municipal elections coming up, now that they've gotten rid of the paper and they've gone to these Diebold touchscreens, they're going to pay 3 times, it's going to cost 3 times more than it used to for their old elections to run them, a small local election, to bring in these professionals and training and everything else, to program these very complicated computer systems. It's ridiculous, and as you may be suggesting, it is a scam. That our tax dollars, in fact, are going to these companies to run elections which are less transparent and less accountable and less accurate than the system we had in place before.
Brad Friedman, great information. For our viewers out there, thebradblog.com for more voting news and other breaking stories. Brad Friedman, thank you so much for joining us on the INN World Report.
Always a pleasure, Lenny. Thank you.